That's my hair.
Hello, Michele.
Hello, Yvette.
Michele Francino.
Frank.
Oh, yes. Forgot.
Oops, you just forgot that one little minor detail.
We've been back in our childhood, so that I've just pictured us all as children again and forgotten that we have other lives.
That I've been married for 10 years now.
So, Michele?
Yeah?
This is, once again, July 9th, 1995. We are...
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, it's December 9th.
You want to start over?
I'm really confused. Yes, we should.
I think so far this interview is saying a lot more about you than it is about me.
Okay, this is my last question. Tell me about your life.
Well, first of all, I have a very confused sister.
Tell us the truth. What is today?
Today's date, in fact, is December 9th, not July. However, you did get the year right. And as such, December 9th, 1995, today is Mom's 60th birthday, so that's a really exciting thing. And furthermore, we have all gathered here at Neal's residence and witnessed his commencements. So he's graduated from college, so that will give you,
Yeah, now we're back.
Tears of laughter coming out of Yvette's eyes.
This interview is about you. Let us keep the focus on Michele Francino Hebreek. Okay.
Got my name right at least. Jeez, there's so much to tell.
I think we should limit each person to 15 minutes. Okay?
I was born in a territory of Hawaii. That was before it was a state. Not too many people can say that.
Do you remember what year that was?
Yes, I remember it well. That was 1958. And therefore now I betray my age and I forever will be unable to lie about my age.
But, Michele, you will always be this age on this videotape, so even 100 years from now...
I know, but when they are trying to track me down and they catch me in a lie about my age, then now it is on videotape. And they will say, aha! You are really such and such, because we heard you admit to being born in 1958.
Which would make you how old now?
Older than you.
37.
Yes, 37. Well, at least I'm not 40.
That's right, and except for... Is your hair color?
Am I going to be present during your interview? Let me see. Didn't you want to have a few little anecdotes about things that might embarrass other family members?
No, your anecdotes are only supposed to embarrass yourself or someone dead.
Or someone dead.
For example, you can tell
maligning somebody's name after they have no way of...
You can tell something about Grandma or Grandpa.
Are you suggesting that I do that?
Not their secrets, but, if there's some embarrassing moment...
well, to be honest, I can't think of any embarrassing
story
moments.
about Grandma at her wedding night.
I think I'll let Mom tell that story.
Maybe we don't want to remember Grandma.
Oh, no, that's
all right.
I think you're going to have to really rethink. You're going to do a lot of editing on this interview.
Okay. What else? How would you like to be remembered?
As a very benevolent and generous-hearted person who...
Let me restate that. How do you think people are going to remember you?
Wow.
No, I'm just
Does that imply that you don't think that they'll remember me as a benevolent and generous of heart?
No, not at all. I just wanted to clarify the question.
This is pretty suspicious when you clarified the question after my answer. Could you repeat it again, please?
How do I think you'll be remembered?
How do I think I will be remembered? Golly, I don't know.
Okay, let's go back to how you want to be remembered.
Oh, well, I know the answer to that
okay.
one. Benevolent and generous of heart.
Okay.
I want everybody to look forward to visiting me at my house because they know that they will get to eat lots of good food and be well taken care of.
Okay.
Even if we don't take them out very much.
Uh-oh, someone at the door.
At the door. Hark!
Wait, let me put this on standby.
Me
Hi
again.
Okay. Tell us about your family.
My children, that family? My
Any
children,
family
husband,
you want to
or
tell
my
us about.
siblings? Since you're having a hard time
No,
remembering
I
our
actually
marriage.
was meaning, I was meaning your children, that family.
Oh, well, they are by far the most perfect and beautiful children on the face of the planet. Even though yours are cute. Yours are cute and smart and all those good things, but mine are just near perfection. And they're so multi-talented. And they're just incredibly awesome
Well,
creatures.
let's start with their names.
Okay. Okay, you want their names.
Their names, ages, what they like to do, things like that.
Okay, my first child is Rachel, and she is 8.5 years old, and she is a very outgoing and affectionate and sensitive girl. She likes to play soccer a lot, and she has been involved in Girl Scouts for 4 years, and she is very passionate about fantasy and fairy tales, and she's a very dramatic girl. She likes to reenact every movie she's ever seen, and that's good for Rachel.
Okay.
Number 2 is Reese, and he is 5, almost 6. He will be 6 in 3 months. That's hard to believe. And he is a very he is a child that has very passionate emotions. He is a very, very affectionate and sensitive and loving child when he feels in a happy mood. And when he's frustrated, he can be a bit of a handful. And he also likes to play soccer, but his passion is airplanes and baseball and dinosaurs. And he is presently involved in Indian Guides, and his father is the chief, so he's very proud of that. And he just has only just started being involved in that. So, but he's very excited about all the upcoming activities, and he's in kindergarten, and Rachel's in 3rd grade. And then comes Rebecca. She is 4, and she is very precocious, and I think the word rascal describes her very adequately. She's very stubborn and has a very strong will and mind of her own, does not want to do anything that her mother asks her to do. And however, she's also very, very affectionate and very anxious to please people, and she's in preschool, and she's excited about starting kindergarten next year. And there you are.
Okay.
What else can I tell you?
Does
that cover it?
Good. Okay. How about, what are your hobbies, talents, likes, dislikes? How would you
Well, I used to have a
describe
life.
yourself at this time
at
your
this
life?
time in my life.
Or in your past, or in your general makeup of what you...
I get the idea, Yvette. At this time in my life, I don't have very much time for hobbies because I am very involved in my children's lives and in trying to participate in the activities that happen with them at school or driving them to their various after-school activities or all the things that have to do with them. So very, very much my life completely revolves around my children at this time. So, however, I am very interested in cooking. I enjoy cooking and baking a lot. And I used to enjoy gardening a lot. I don't have very much time for gardening these days. But I still enjoy it and look forward to a day when I have more time that I would be able to do that. And I like needlework. I like to cross-stitch and embroider and needlework arts. I enjoy that a lot. I like to be creative, and that makes me feel good to create things, like even if it's like painting a bedroom in a different, more creative way, or making things. I like that. In my former life, I was a photographer, and I'm still very interested in photography, but it requires more of a commitment than I'm prepared to make at this time in my life. So I don't know what to say about that. It's what
a dormant hobby.
So that's right. It's something I like, and hopefully someday I'll have time for that again too. But right now I can't give it the attention it requires of me. Oh, I know it. I really am enjoying learning the computer. I never had formal education on the computer, and when I was a girl, they didn't have computers. Oh my gosh! So we need to learn about that in school, and isn't that extraordinary? Can you imagine what the children are going to think when they hear that? Anyway, so I am trying to learn how to master the computer, and usually I'm learning the hard way by making lots of mistakes and just experimenting and that sort of thing. But I really enjoy it. It makes me feel really good when I do get something right, and that's pretty fun. I think that it would be really interesting to be able to incorporate the computer skills with the photography, because I know that's a really big area that would be, if I were to go back to work, I think that's what I would like to pursue, is computer graphics, that sort of thing.
Is there any messages that you would like to give the future generations?
My words of wisdom to
your
future
children
generations?
and their children? And
well, no, I wasn't really prepared for that question. And I'm not one that has words of wisdom just dangling off the tip of my tongue.
You have...
I do have one really good, I guess it's a proverb or saying that I enjoy very much, and it pretty much, I think it encapsulates my life at this period in my life. That anybody who says they sleep like a baby probably doesn't have any.
Yeah. And,
I don't have any words of wisdom. I think that would require me to give that a little more thought. I don't give out advice flippantly.
You wouldn't want somebody to go out and base their life off of what you thought.
Quite honestly, I'm still pretty much struggling with my own.
Is there anything that, off the top of your head, if you could go back and live the life that you've lived so far over again, that you would do differently?
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you about it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Do you have any other stories or thoughts on today's current events, today's
Yeah,
world.
I do, but really the words that I would use are probably not appropriate for children. um, one of the things that bothers me a great deal about our times today in 1995, it is the obsession with our media to sensationalize the news and to just constantly try to put the most sensational and ridiculous stories on the news just to get you to watch the news at 11 o'clock. And that makes me really angry because I think they are, in many ways, misrepresent issues and frighten people, not to mention the fact that we're so totally focused on body count. If I drink my little espresso, do you?
I'm sorry that we were interrupted, Michelle.
Could you refresh my memory? Where did we leave off?
You were just you were
Complaining
talking
about the damn news.
Yes, and I think we got the gist.
Got the main idea, did you?
Although your final statement was perhaps cut off by a.
That's okay. It's pretty scary when I get serious.
All right. Well, do you want to leave us with any other? Oh, how about predictions? For example,
Predictions about our family?
Well, yeah, our
particular?
family, and for example, 1996. I don't know that we would do this every year, but anything pertaining to our family in 96, or it doesn't necessarily have to be our family.
I predict that in 1996, Reese will turn 6.
Oh.
Rachel 9 and Rebecca 5.
I see we have a prophet in our midst.
That's right. Very profound statements. I am not a person who very much thinks about predicting the future because I'm not real good with words either.
Okay, what do you want to happen? Let's put that. Not necessarily that you think is going to happen. Is there anything that you can think of that you want to happen?
I would really like to. This real short time that the 6 of us have had together, because we were brought together because of Neal's graduation, and is the first time that all 6 of us, the original Francinos, have been together for some years, all together at the same time. And I know 5 of us have been together here and there, but 6, it has been hard. And I would like to. It's such a pleasure, and it's. I don't know if we enjoy it more just because it's so rare and valuable to us, but I would like to think that we could try to make more of an effort to do that, even though I know that it's really hard for almost everybody involved. It seems like it's just such a worthwhile kind of way to spend time, even if it's a really short amount of time. So that's not so much a prediction, but I guess that is something I would like, not necessarily to happen every year, right, because that's asking a lot, I know, but maybe every other year if we would make some kind of commitment to working out a mutually agreed upon sort of situation. Mm-hmm. That would be nice.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any parting thoughts?
No, but I'll work on something.
We can always get back to you.
Higher caliber for you on our next interview.
All right. Yes.
On our next meeting.
Okay. Well.
Signing off.
And when I start talking?
No. Well, we're recording now, so this is still December 9th, 1995, and now we are talking with Neal Francino, proud graduate of San Luis Obispo. Neal.
Yes. How may I help you?
Well, we're just, I'm starting a video library trying to, kind of have biographical sketches of everyone, their likes, dislikes, hobbies, life stories, any kind of anecdotes I was corrected once before. Or stories about your past, your present, your future, your even before you got here.
Well, that's pretty private, I think, maybe.
Are there any stories that you would like to share with us? Maybe I should just ask questions.
Yeah, might be better thing.
All right. Let's talk about your childhood.
Okay.
How do you remember your childhood?
Well, when you say childhood, I tend to think of the times when we were back in Kansas, which we moved from Kansas when I was 6, going on 7 years old. So I don't know. I just tend to remember that as my real childhood. Whereas when we came to California, things were obviously, well, as my siblings would know, a little more loose in the fact that we could just go to school and Mom and Dad really didn't have too much of an idea of where we were at the time.
So where were you?
Well, at school.
Oh, you mean
forever.
at school?
Yeah,
they didn't know you were.
They just, well, Mom was working though at the time when she was nursing when we first moved back to California, or when we first moved to California, and Dad was working, so pretty much had to get to school on my own, which wasn't hard to do because we all had bikes then, which we didn't
So
really have.
you felt that was the end of your childhood?
Well, if I were to think about my childhood, I'll think of, let's see, or the Topo Gijos.
What is Topo Gijos?
You remember the Topo Gijos? Well, if this is like for all of like your grandchildren and generations to come, if any of you ever get a Topo Gijo, hang on to it, because they're going to be worth some money someday. Actually, I think they're worth some money now. It's a little, it's like a mouse with a spring on his neck, so when you move it all, his head starts just jamming around. Anyway, it's like a bank. Anyway.
We'll keep our eyes out for Topo Gijos.
I think of Topo Gijos and cars that go on dirt. And,
well, explain to us, what are cars that go on dirt?
It's actually this little toy that Chris and I had, and we used to play with it on the hill behind our house in Kansas. And it was really a Jeep, but back in that time when we were children, we used to call it a car that goes on dirt. And I wouldn't be surprised if Chris has already given you the old grandma
Well, I'd
story.
still like to get back to the car that goes on dirt, because I always thought when you were kids that whenever you saw a Volkswagen Beetle, you know those little Beetle
Yeah,
cars?
what did we used to say?
That's what I thought you always called cars that go on dirt.
No, that's a car that goes on water.
Oh.
Because they floated, I think, or something.
Oh, okay.
I always remembered it as a little Jeep that Chris and I had. So.
Okay.
But
and then there's old
that
grandma.
just strikes in my mind right now. Old grandma.
Would you like to sing that song for
No,
us?
I don't know if I would rather. I think I'd have to have Chris in the room at the same time. Since
Oh.
he's the one who really
Do
taught
that
it to me.
together.
He's the originator of old grandma, and I'd like to have that on the record right now.
All right. Are there any other things from your past? Maybe little. How about you and Chris used to get into little scrapes here and there, didn't you? Did you? Or was that only Chris?
Tell you that? I'm just curious as to what Chris might have told you.
Just fishing here.
There was a time that Chris, this is after we moved to California, about a couple houses down from where Mom and Dad still live, on Westcott Way. There's a house there now, but it used to be an empty field for a long time, and we used to dig big holes in the field and have dirt clod wars with people, neighborhood children. And Chris and I really, because we were so close to the field, built a very elaborate fort. And what we did is it would be a big hole, but if the dirt clods were being thrown into us from this direction and into the hole, we built a little side tunnel on the inside of the hole. So we could always just sit in there. It didn't matter if anybody was throwing dirt clods at us because they'd never hit us. So we were testing it out to make sure it worked, and I was in the hole while Chris was throwing things in there. And except Chris wasn't throwing just like dirt clods, he was throwing these big rocks and stuff. and I thought it was like, he said, okay. It's like, so all right. So I started coming out, and another big boulder came down and smashed me on the head. and I was bleeding really hard, and I just remember the typical, just don't tell Mom and Dad. Just, you know, and trying to walk me back home and say, it's okay now, just don't tell Mom and Dad. And which reminds me of another story when Chris and I had boxing gloves for a present, and matter of fact, I still have the dresser in the next room here several years later, but we were boxing, and Chris hit my head, and it hit the corner of the dresser, which, again, my head was bleeding. Several times in my childhood, my head was bleeding when I would play with Chris. But, and again, it was just don't tell Mom and Dad. And
the moral of the story is don't play with Chris.
Don't play with Chris.
Hi!
Haven't we already had your interview?
Is this like the payback for having walked in?
He locked in on mine. Can you put on standby for a minute?
Okay, well, Michele has to be on the road, so we're going to have to continue this at a later time. But for today, Neal, are there any thoughts that you would like to, today is a very important milestone in your life, Neal's graduation day from Cal Poly, and do you have any parting thoughts about the present?
Well, for the video, best thing to do is probably get a copy of my memoirs later. I had a very, I feel, interesting life and a lot of very much so soap opera material.
Oh.
But
I haven't
not
heard
even
that
all
yet.
not even all the stories. Have you even heard?
I'm sure I haven't
I'm
heard.
sure you haven't. But very happy right now. I'm very happy that our family is together, especially on this day. I was very happy that I was able to go through my graduation ceremonies on Mom's 60th birthday. I knew about it ahead of time, and it just happened to work out that way. I will be continuing school for the next 3 months to put the final touches on what I have accomplished at this point, and hope to continue on with my life in similar senses of my two sisters, meaning I'm looking forward to getting married someday soon here and having children of my own, and having a job that I could have the things in life, such as a house and a family.
Okay.
But now I'm very happy. I'm happy that this is an accomplishment that I didn't even expect for myself. Wasn't even planning on going back to school, but it happened, and it worked out really well for me. So I'm very pleased right now as I can kind of enjoy my weekend. I have to go to work in a couple days, however, I just found out, but I'll be heading back to Sacramento and enjoy a little vacation before I come back here to Pismo Beach and relax and through the Christmas season holidays. And then hopefully I can maybe have another video and kind of update you, something I'm not too comfortable in front of cameras, so maybe speaking to my generations down the line, relatives, but have a better feeling for me as a person versus a shy person in front of a camera who doesn't feel comfortable necessarily in front of a camera. You almost have to catch me off guard or on a ski video or something.
Okay, well maybe we can get a little footage at the beach.
Maybe a little footage at the beach.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye!
It all?
Yeah. We're here on Pismo Beach now.
Hi, Bex.
Mom.
My time, okay?
Sorry.
We're here now in an environment that Neal has grown accustomed to, right on the beach. Unfortunately, it's foggy.
It's unbelievable because it's the very first foggy day we've had all year long, and it happens to be the day that my family comes out.
We were here last night. It was beautiful.
Yeah, they
Here for
actually
sunset.
most of the family got to watch a very lovely sunset. A little fortunate that I can see that going down over the ocean from my office right now, which I'll only be able to do that for another 3 months. I purposely moved out here so that I can enjoy the end of my college days here.
Mm-hmm.
But and there's other reasons why I pretty much hang out on the beach. Get a little pan there.
All I see is fog right now.
My sister refuses to turn the camera towards a beautiful woman walking down the beach with her dog, which is primarily one of the main reasons I moved here.
I already could see a beautiful woman
just
that you're
in case I happen to be married somewhere down the line, it may have been you that I was looking at.
Who is this little girl you have with you?
Rebecca, would you like to say hi? Say hi to the camera. This is my godchild. This is Rebecca Hebring. And she is so nice that she came up all the way from my graduation, and we spent a really nice day together, all of us. Her and Mommy are going to go home real soon, so we thought we'd come down and look at the ocean real quick before she had to go. Okay. She doesn't want to step on the sand, though. She doesn't want to get her socks dirty. So I'm going to be holding her for this time. But that's okay, because I really like holding her.
Okay.
And I'm really sorry that you didn't get a chance to see this lovely ocean. It's, the exception of the 15, 20 feet that you can see, really beautiful place, and it's a big, huge beach that goes on for miles down the way. So take walks on the beach almost daily with my roommate's dog, and having a nice time right now. So anyway, it's just another little piece of where I live.
All right, thank you.
Oh, okay, bye.
Okay, Chris.
You can also get when people are, what their actions are, picking their nose or cracking their knuckles, things like that.
Yeah, or just lying casual on the bed. So this is Chris Francino, December 10th, 1995. State your age, please.
Am I in a lineup? 34.
And Chris, you're the third in the Francino family that we're interviewing. What are your thoughts?
Are you expecting to be casual? You're just making it like the documentary. What are my thoughts? I think this is a good idea. In fact, I'm probably the only other one besides you who is really advocating doing something like this. In the future, I bet it'll be pretty fun to watch, to see what everybody was like and what their feelings were. But the first one's going to be pretty much trial and error because it's very artificial with a camera. So I think just by doing this the first time, that maybe it'll seem more natural the next time we do it, or you can get a better, come up with a better plan than just interrogating somebody.
Okay, well, let's have a little biographical information. Let's see, you are the son of the third child, first son of Terry and Suzanne Francino, born in, what year was that?
Born in 1961, September 28th.
And how would you describe your childhood?
Pretty homey, especially when you compare it to a lot of friends you had. I think that we had a lot of, most of what I remember is just playing games and doing normal kid type of stuff. Neal and I hung out a lot and did the kinds of things that little guys do. I don't really remember a lot of like fighting, physical fighting. We did all the arguing that you always hear everybody that's involved with childhoods and things like that. I remember a lot more like formal vacations than you hear now. I think a lot of people do things, but I always remember, summer vacation being a big deal, and whether we went a short distance or took like a cross-country trip. Summer vacations seem to be something that are not as formalized now as they used to be.
How about as you were growing up? Yeah, I'd say the whole childhood years as you were living at home. How would you describe yourself and your role in our family?
I guess I always remember being tagged as interested in money, as far as like the banks, or I can't pin it specifically, but always saving money, or always really interested in money more than everybody else. Plus, I don't think it's a big secret. In fact, if you asked everybody the same thing, I was probably the leading troublemaker as far as
getting into trouble and mischief and doing bad things.
Any particular episode that?
I do remember in Kansas when we were playing some game upstairs, and I think Dad made some sort of comment or whatever while we were playing the game, and I retorted with, "Oh, Dad thinks he's so smart," and Mom overheard that, and that's probably about one of the most upset times I've ever heard Mom, and I definitely got some standing in the corner time for that one. And I think an apology was part of the punishment as well.
Okay.
That's what I remember most specifically about getting into trouble, but pretty much happened all the time. And I think as far as discipline, the stand in the corner plan was the leading contender as far as what discipline was. Every once in a while you get a couple of good spanks, but other instances I don't really remember because that's probably the only time that I was bad.
I remember several, but this is your interview. I won't
You
disclose.
You can tear me down during your interview.
No,
which I will be conducting.
that's not allowed. We're focusing on each other.
I know.
If you don't want to
Should be
confess
no
your own
holds.
secrets,
I think there should be no holds about that. So.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, how about teen years, girlfriends, relationships, any goals? What were your teen years? How do you remember them?
Teen years, I remember being not exceptionally social with girls. In fact, the dates that I had, if you could even call them that, were real limited to just formal types of things like proms and that sort of things. Like when I was in the latter couple of years of high school, I don't even really remember having a quote-unquote date that was outside of something that was already pre-planned. It wasn't a real. I was not a social butterfly. The social activities I did were mostly in groups of, larger groups of people. We did we had, our parties and things like that. And I kind of hung around with a group of, my own little clique, the same sort of people. I had a lot of cross-country friends, people that I did a lot of running with because I was big into running long distance in high school. And then I had also kind of a small circle of other people that I ran with, just like everybody has their friends. But I was interested in girls. I just didn't ask anybody out. Couldn't get a date.
Well, when did that start changing for you?
I wasn't real social with women dating, that sort of thing. Got even until like the latter part of college, because having gone to the academy is not real conducive to a big social atmosphere like that. So that I was pretty late bloomer in that category, I'd say.
Okay.
And the rest of my high school days, or I'd say it was more categorized by my running, cross-country running and track. I started to get classified as more of a brainy brainy kind of person because school, I did pretty good in school, so and I didn't really. That was fine, but I didn't want that sole reputation. I didn't want to just be, the smart person. I wanted to be social and wanted to have all the qualities that everybody wants. But I pretty much got more categorized into smart. Plus, I was real small in high school. Very small. I was typically, out of the whole class, the smallest or second or third smallest. I was much tinier than the average person for the grades that I was going through. So I remember that.
So up to now, we've pretty much gone up to your senior and high school year. You want to, give a brief summary of your years at the academy, what that life was like?
Kind of difficult to give a brief summary, but it was, being in military school, it was a very disciplined, sort of different life. I was not very, I had not understood completely what that all entailed. I wanted to fly. I know you could, having gone to the academy. And graduating with your eyes being okay, you were guaranteed to fly, and that was kind of the main reason. That was the big basis for me wanting to go to the academy. And I was a little bit surprised with how strict and how disciplined that school was. So it was a very different sort of closed lifestyle. It was good education and experience. I couldn't match it, and I would never trade it for what I've done. But there's a lot to be understood about it, and maybe I'm on some other tape or whatever, because I can't, in a couple of minutes, I can't just go through the whole thing. But very, very structured and disciplined 4 years, but very incredible too, because a lot of my present day friends still are from the academy.
Okay, let's move on then past the academy and your life since then up to the present day. What would be the most significant thing that you can think of between the time you graduated till present day? I guess that maybe there's more than one significant thing, but anything that comes to your mind as something in particular that's happened during those times, or how would you describe your life since the academy, since graduation?
The difference between the academy and then being released to real life on your own was giant, because I was to an area that was the most disciplined I've ever been, or I've ever had to be in my life. And then you graduate, and then all of a sudden you're sort of in adulthood there, where you really are making almost every single decision for yourself. So it was like such an opposition in lifestyles that I don't know, that probably shaped a lot of the way I am. In fact, the academy mostly did, because I led such a disciplined life that after that, I think it almost went to the opposite, that I really felt that I had a giant amount of freedom. And the fact that I haven't had a family gives me a lot more flexibility in the things that I do, so I probably have more of a carefree lifestyle as far as flexible, being able to go places and do things without the full responsibility of family. I don't think my life is really categorized one particular way. It's dominated by my flying. First of all, 7 years in the Air Force following graduation from the academy, and now airline life, which is very involved with traveling. So I don't spend all my time at home. I'm on the road flying a lot, and so that really characterizes my lifestyle. And it comes with a lot of good and a lot of bad, but it's a very different sort of blowing in the wind lifestyle.
How about your interests and hobbies, and how would you describe your personality today?
My interests are a lot geared towards business, just involved in business transactions and things like that. It's sort of, I compare a lot of it to the way Dad gets excited about conducting some sort of deal or something like that. Still My life is not driven by it, but I still like the exchange of money and just business in general. I'm really interested in cars. I have been for a long time. I buy and sell and export and broker automobiles, and I've gone through a lot. Antique cars and racing cars, that sort of thing, are something that I'm really interested in. Golf has really kind of popped up more in the last, say, 5 or 8 years. I like golfing for sport. And I like attending sporting events like professional games and things like that. I like going to those. And I would say I'm a pretty big gambler, as far as literally gambler. I like going to Vegas and rolling dice and playing poker, that sort of thing. Anything where it's wager, games of chance, things like that are exciting to me. And I like visiting all nieces and nephews when I come out. And I think I'm more able to go around and visit people. And like I said before about being more flexible, I like going to see different family around the country or wherever they're at. So.
How about love life, past, present, or future?
Love life has been pretty colorful, I would think. Never having been married, it's kind of like the never-ending quest for searching for the right person. I think that my love life is a lot more stable now than it was 10 years ago. I'm really looking to have a family, and I do want to get married. So I think a lot of people wonder about that since I haven't been. But no, I'm looking for the right woman.
What is the right woman? How do you describe her? Who are you looking for?
Take a look at who my wife is right now. While you're watching this thing, look who my wife is right now, and that's the one I was searching for. I'm really glad I found her.
Want to say hi to your future wife?
Hi, honey.
Okay, how about...
Babe, I knew I was going to marry you all along. I'm serious.
How would you hope your future would be? What are you hoping for in the future for yourself?
When I think about the future, the funny thing is I really think about, I'd like to have kids very much, and the thing that I'm most concerned about is the kind of world that probably doesn't sound much different than people who have kids now, but the kind of world that they have to grow up in. A lot of different aspects, but I think education mostly. I'm really concerned about when I do have kids, the quality of the world they have to grow up in, and I know there are a lot of decisions associated with that, but that's really what I'm most concerned about, because I think things are a lot different now than they were, in days past when we grew up, or our parents, or even before that. It certainly is a different quality of living, and there are a lot stronger influences, I think, in the negative as time goes on for younger kids.
Okay. How would you describe our world and our country today, and what kind of
I think that my feeling about our world and our country has a lot to do with my concerns about the future, especially for kids. It seems pretty strange for me being concerned about something that maybe I will never have to be concerned about for my kids, but I see a lot of that through my nieces and nephews and things. That's something that really might bother you. And I don't know, I'm concerned about a lot of the different events that have been happening in the world as far as the way things have been changing. Here comes Mom. She
Any,
can't stand not to be involved. Come in. Oh, Mom.
okay, once again, we're going to have to
Erase
cut it
this
a
whole
little
thing
short.
so I can really plan, because I know this interview was a lot longer than Michelle's or Neal's.
No, it was about the
And I
same
didn't
as
have a chance to
Michelle's.
prepare.
I think you prepared more than they did. But I agree that I think everyone will want a second chance. You know, this is really just a first
It's a good
attempt.
idea. You have to start it, because now at least the next time we do it, then maybe they won't be so.
Yeah, have a little better idea of what you want to say.
It's also hard just looking at the camera and talking. It's hard to not feel like the camera is just zeroing in on you.
Well, it is. But
So I think we should have a secret camera, secret camera eye. But you tell everybody there's a secret camera eye, but they don't know where it is. So the whole interview, they could be like,
that might be a little irritating to watch, but anyway. Okay, we need to wrap up here.
okay.
How would you, if there was anything you could go back and do differently in your life at this point, is there anything that comes to mind that you would want to do?
No, I haven't really been asked that question before, although it sounds pretty cliche-ish. Sounds pretty cliche. Oh yeah, I would do this tape over. I'm very satisfied with and happy with, and that's, see, this seems artificial too, but I really wouldn't change anything.
Okay. And how do you want to be remembered as, you know?
Not like this.
I'd
like a second chance on it.
Okay. All right.
Did
Well,
anybody else say
are
that?
there any? No.
Oh,
But, oh, they did say they wanted a second chance. They didn't. They came up with something when I said, "How do you want to be remembered?" But
no, you said if I change anything.
oh, no, I don't.
If I had to
don't
change
think so.
anything, you said, would I do that?
No, I don't think anything. I don't remember anybody saying
Okay.
anything in particular. I'm not even sure if I asked that to everyone. But any parting thoughts as we do need to cut off?
No, just kids and boys and girls and everybody when you're watching this, and you know, I'm an old man. Just, you know, be nice to me and stuff.
Okay.
Give me things.
Okay.
Say hi, Grandpa.
Signing off.
Okay.
All right, we're sitting here, and this is Chris finishing some of these interviews for the tape that Yvette started. And this is Suzanne, the matriarch of the Francino clan. And today is the 15th of December, 1995. This is my first shot at doing the interview stuff, so it might be a little structured, but we'll see what we can do. I'll try and follow sort of the guidelines we have here for some just general questions. So, when were you born, Mom?
December 9th, 1935.
Okay, and you're daughter of?
Eulalie and Bernard Neighbors.
Okay. Do you have any recollections, or I should say just the earliest recollections of your childhood? Anything just generally about home life and years at home, that sort of thing?
Earliest recollection I have of anything, I must have been 4 or 5 years old, was on a vacation in Wisconsin with my mother and father. And they were renting a cabin on a lake, and a little ground squirrel, they were chipmunk, got in the kitchen. So I think my dad was trying to catch it, and it was racing around and racing under the refrigerator and everywhere, and that was very exciting to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the earliest memory that I really have of anything.
Okay. Can you just tell us a little bit about Grandma and Grandpa, Mom and Dad, or
your mother and
That
father?
would take hours.
Yeah, just if you had to kind of do your best to sum it up and just,
Okay.
it's difficult, but just give us some thoughts about personalities, etc.
My father and mother, having been born in 1901 and I think it was 1902 and 1903, was very much a product of that area. My father was extremely modest. The only swear words I ever remember my father saying were damn around the house. He never told dirty jokes. And he kept private matters very private. For instance, I never knew how much money my father made. I never knew exactly what his job was. If I asked him where he worked at the Illinois Bell Telephone Company. But I never knew until I was an adult that he was in an office doing paperwork. In his younger years, I think he started out like climbing telephone poles and doing stuff like that. But later he was in an office. But he didn't have a high management job or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a 9-to-5 job. And he was home for dinner every night. My mother fixed dinner and we ate in the dining room every night. And after dinner, my sister and I would carry the dishes in the kitchen, and it was just routine. My mother was a homemaker. She never ever worked. So she was your typical stereotype housewife that took care of all the quote-unquote female things. She did the laundry. She took care of the children. She took care of school things. All the things that a mom was supposed to do. And Dad took care of all the things a dad was supposed to do. And it was very, very stereotyped as it was in those years. My mother could not have held down a job even if that had been something she wanted to do because her health was very fragile. She had been raised to believe that she was very fragile. When she was young, she got nosebleeds very easily, and in the early 1900s, when a child got a nosebleed, they would pack the nose with gauze, and then when it dried, you can imagine a doctor coming to the house on a second day and pulling gauze out of someone's nose that had been dried. I mean, it was excruciatingly painful, and she remembered all those early years of different ailments she had had. Her parents treated her differently than her 6 younger brothers. She was supposed to sit still, not run around, do needlework, do ladylike things, not participate in, a lot of things the other kids did. So she grew up believing that her health was extremely fragile. And she was emotionally very, very nervous. She would get very, very sick, migraine headaches, and we never knew really what all that was, but a lot of it was emotional. If someone, for instance, would knock at the door and stop in unexpectedly, by the time they were ready to go home, my mother would probably have to go in the bathroom and throw up. Something like that would be enough to unnerve her. Any unforeseen circumstance would make my mother very ill. And all through my growing up years, I remember many, many times when my mother had a migraine headache for 3 days, and if you even accidentally bumped the side of the bed, she would shudder in great pain, and you had to remove the little wind-up clock because it made too much noise. And my father would kind of take care of things while this was going on. They led a very routine kind of life, doing ordinary entertaining. We did go on a vacation every summer, mostly up to Lake Pleasant in Wisconsin, where they rented a cottage for a week or 2 weeks. Once, I remember, for 3 weeks, because my father enjoyed fishing. He would take me out fishing with him. I had a little sister. Nancy was 4.5 years younger than I was. I don't remember my brother at all. I was 9 years old when he was killed in the end of World War II. So I mostly remember my brother Neal from pictures and things that I've seen of him. My sister Nancy claims she remembers him, but she was only 5 when he died.
and she thinks she remembers him playing with her, but I have no active memory of my brother. So my memories of childhood and growing up involve my sister and myself.
Okay, let's hold that thought for one moment. It looks like the tape might be getting towards the close. We'll take a quick pause
Do we
here.
have enough?
Okay, we are coming to the end of this tape, so I just, for whatever library's sake it is, at this time, this interview will continue, so this will be continued on the beginning of the next tape, however it's cataloged. So this is not the end of this. Continue with the next tape. Continuing with Suzanne on the tape here, and I believe we left off, you'd already told us a little bit about your parents, started getting into your childhood a little bit. More specifically about you instead of the other people. Do you remember anything as far as the usualities of your day-to-day life as a child? Any stories about you and Nancy?
I was your classic good little girl. I just did what my mother wanted me to, and I was her pet. I was sort of the teacher's pet at school. The other kids in grade school weren't that fond of me because I was sort of like a teacher's pet and always in the first seat. They used to put the smartest kids in class in the first seat. And so I had a fairly uneventful elementary 8 years at the Catholic school. Then I went to high school, had a lot of fun, really enjoyed myself, going to all the dances and all the activities.
Do you have any particular hobbies at that time, or just...
No. Canasta was the rage to play a card game, and so 3 other girls and myself played a lot of canasta, and it was just filled with normal high school activities.
Mm-hmm. And as the teen years came on, did anything change, or were there any additions to some of your hobbies, or your boyfriends that you
Well, I had a boyfriend in high school, and that occupied a lot of my time because we went to all the basketball games and the dances and, everything like that. So the time was real busy and real filled, just like it is with all high school kids.
Okay. And what about, like, activities with other girlfriends? Did you do movies or just...
Only my freshman year, because I got a boyfriend at the end of my freshman year, and then all through my next 3 years, we mostly double dated or did things in groups, but I always had a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm. And were you involved in sports or any other recreational thing?
No, I wasn't involved in sports. I was very small, and I was not really athletic.
Mm-hmm. And how about outlooks for college and preparation for that?
I always wanted to be a nurse. I knew from the time I was 5 years old that I wanted to be a nurse. So my mind was already made up. So I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and when I graduated from high school, we had already looked into places for me to go to nursing school. And I went to St. Xavier College of Nursing downtown in Chicago, and it was affiliated with Mercy Hospital. And I went there for 4 years and got my degree.
Mm-hmm. And how about during those years, or the time when you began to meet Terry and...
I met Dad my freshman year. I was only at the nursing school 3 weeks, and Illinois Institute of Technology had a dance, and they were mostly boys at that school, and they invited student nurses from the surrounding area. There were several hospitals that had student nurses. Besides Mercy Hospital, which was mine, there was Loyola, and there was Michael Reese, and I think a couple of other hospitals. So they invited student nurses that were in these programs to be their guests, and we were bused over to Illinois Institute of Technology so that they would have a supply of girls. And it was, there were about, I don't know whether there were about 10 of us that went from my school, but the dance had hundreds and hundreds of boys and not really that many girls. And Dad asked me to dance first. He was the first one to ask me to dance. That's how I met him.
And can you tell us how the courtship went along, and your relationship prior to the marriage?
Well, Dad had 3 years of college left, and I had just started my 4 years. So throughout that time, we dated, and I dated other guys as well, but Dad was always back on the horizon. And by the time he graduated, he had given me a diamond ring, and he had to graduate. He graduated the year before I did. So he was committed to the Navy for 3 years, and he spent his first year as an ensign in the Navy while I was finishing up my final year of college. And we were married the June right after I graduated.
Okay, and how about early life as newlyweds?
It was great. We lived in Newport, Rhode Island, and then in Philadelphia when he got orders to go to Hawaii. And we went to Hawaii in March of 1958, and I was already pregnant with Michele. Michele was born in July of 1958 in Honolulu, in a beautiful hospital there. And we spent 14 months in Hawaii. And then when we came back home, Dad was discharged from the Navy in '59, and Michele was about 9 months old when we came back from Honolulu on the USS Lurleen, which was a luxury cruiser. The Navy paid for that cruise because it just so happened that the ship that normally takes discharged employees wasn't on schedule at the time Dad needed to go. So they let us come back on this beautiful ship, and we, of course, docked in San Francisco, and then we made a trip to Los Angeles and spent some time with Aunt Jean and Uncle Herb, my father's brother. And then we made our way to Chicago, where Dad was interviewing for jobs, and he interviewed with Procter & Gamble was one of the companies he interviewed with. And although we did go to New York and see all of Dad's family, he decided to accept the position with Procter & Gamble. So in May of '59, Dad went to work for Procter & Gamble, and that's where we stayed in Chicago for about 6 or 7 years, and then in 1966 we moved to Kansas City. He was transferred, and then in 1971 we moved to Sacramento, and we've been here ever since.
Okay. Do you have any remembrances really of the days when you were pretty much playing the mother role and with the children in their earlier years and that sort of thing?
Just that I personally always enjoyed it and never found it a burden. That may sound strange to somebody else, but my children, for me, it was a very rewarding experience. I never, ever hungered to be out working. I was completely fulfilled with my home and my family and cooking and sewing and just doing homemaker things. I never minded at all. Kids were involved with all the normal activities, and I was a brownie leader for Yvette, and I was a Cub Scout leader for Neal, and just, you know, all the normal stuff, nothing really unusual.
Okay, and what significant changes do you think were brought with the move to California and as time went on?
Well, my children were getting older by the time we moved to California. In fact, Neal was 8, and I decided I wanted to go back to work. So that was a change for me. I for 10 years, between 1973 and 1982, I held a variety of nursing positions and enjoyed dipping into the medical field, for which I'd been trained. And so that was a change for me, I think, with my children growing older and spreading their wings out.
Okay, and into probably the third significant phase when the children were reaching adulthood and kind of going out. How would you classify, or what sort of memories do you have of those sort of latter years?
Well, we were just really busy because with 4 of you, it seemed like somebody was always going to school, somebody was graduating, somebody else was had another year to do here. We got Michele through USF, and then Yvette got a scholarship to Japan, so we were all caught up with the year that she went to Japan on the Rotary Club scholarship. She came back and went to Davis, and then in the meantime, Chris is getting interested in the Air Force, and Ed O'Malley was a big advocate and supporter, and Chris gets his appointment to the Air Force Academy, so that was very significant and very exciting for us to participate in that. And now Neal's pulling up the rear and graduating and making plans to go to Humboldt, so those were all really busy years. And I was still working. I was working up through 1982, and Chris didn't graduate from college until 1983, so I think the fact that I was working helped take up any space that the fact that my children were now out of the house pursuing their own lives might have left. I think working helped me a lot in that respect.
And can you just briefly tell us now about your role and your feelings as far as now grandmother as well as mother, and how that really plays a part in your life?
At this time, and I just had my 60th birthday, Michele and Ray have 3 children, and Yvette and Carl have 3 children. We alternate Christmases between our 2 married daughters so that we can spend Christmas with the children. Chris and Neal are not yet married, and it's a very fulfilling time of life. We dearly love seeing the children and the grandchildren. Chris and Neal and Michele and Yvette all find opportunities to come home during the year at a intermittent basis. Michele takes spring vacations and brings the children up here. LA is close enough for me to go down. Yvette's a little further in Denver, but I'm planning to go down there next spring. Dad and I both enjoy duplicate bridge a lot. I do a lot of needlework. That's pleasurable for me. I like to read. I dearly love the enjoyment from our standard poodle. We've had dogs ever since we owned a house, and all of them have been special in their own way, but it always seems like the last one is even still more special. And the standard poodle we have now, Camé, is really a great pleasure to me. I like to work around the house when I don't just mean inside the house. I mean, when the weather's nice, I enjoy going out and getting the leaves all scooped up and doing a little bit of the gardening to make things look pretty outside. So my time is really filled. I like to sew. There's so many things I like to do that I don't really have time enough to sit around and wonder what to do next.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just to wrap things up, we'll get a few thoughts on some things. Future plans. Do you have any ambitions or future plans coming up in particular, or?
Nothing in particular. After Dad had all this serious surgery this past year, I think our main concentration is trying to maintain good health and enjoy our family. At this time, no one lives close to us, and there's no motivation for us to move anywhere because everybody at this current time is probably going to relocate from where they are. So we'll see what the years bring, but right now we just had the kitchen remodeled, and I'm very happy with our location, so we'll just stay put for a while and see what happens.
Okay. Looking back on your life, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I can't imagine anything that was more fulfilling to me than the family that I had. I was very fortunate to have not only the family, but I really think Dad's desire to do some traveling and go to Europe and do some things that brought to me things that I wouldn't have had if he had not been interested in that. He enjoys traveling, and I feel all in all it's been a very, very rewarding life to me. I just can't think of anything really that I would change.
Okay. And I'm reading down here to ask about what you're proud of or most proud of, or if you have any particular fears, just something that maybe says a little something about how you feel at the particular moment.
No fears. I think I would just sound like a mom because I would say what I'm most proud of are my children. And I can't take any credit for that because I think people are what they make of themselves. They may be influenced by their upbringing, but they are what they are. They're responsible for themselves, and I'm very proud of all my children. And it's just a joy for me to have them. That's what means most in my life, is my family. So,
okay.
That's
it. I'm reading something down here. It looks like it could be a little fun thing. It says sing-along. So maybe, would you like to sing a song, maybe? Do you have everything to you?
No, I don't think I would like to do a sing-along. That's a good idea of Yvette's. She should have seen me singing on the karaoke on the ship.
Maybe you'd like to sing along with the Phantom in the background here.
No, I don't think so, because if I do that, anybody that's sitting and watching is going to sit there giggling.
Okay.
And I've never been a good jokester.
Okay. Well, and the last question I have down here is, it says, message to future generations. Do you have any profound thoughts that you'd like to mark down on this piece of tape?
I'm great on profound thoughts, but not instantaneous profound thoughts. But
okay. How about just a
profound
short thought or a
thoughts.
short message? Short thought to future generations. You know, people will be watching this probably about 10,000 years from now, and they'll be wondering
Yeah, right.
Great.
Okay, this is going to really make you laugh. Try not to
You
let
don't have too much tape left.
crises affect you. Get upset about it. Just calmly accept everything, and tomorrow, today's problems won't seem so bad.
Okay. Well, that was very nice. Thank you very much. In the first of, hopefully, a longer series
Okay.
of this.
Want me to call Dad?
Yeah, we'll stop it now. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, here we are, December 16th in the AM with Terry Francino, and we're continuing in the series of interviews, if you will, with everybody, mostly about their own life stories, memories, and things where they grew up. So, for the record, sir, would you please give us your name and your date of birth?
Name is Terry Francino, 1935, March 24th, and my serial number is 054282867.
Okay. We're going to start just chronologically, the most logical way, and we'll start with your childhood, infancy. Can you start with maybe the first memory you really have about your existence in this world?
Well, that would have been on a ship going to Europe with my mother and my brother. And I think I must have been I think it was coming home from Europe, so I must have been around 3 years old. We'd been there for a year because my grandmother was dying and my mother went to take care of me. And I remember my brother swimming in the swimming pool, and I also remember there being a life preserver along the side of the pool, and I was afraid he was going to drown because I saw the life preserver.
Okay, so you think you're about 3 years of age then? And concerning your childhood, do you have certain memories about just the general way things were and either rigid or loose kind of lifestyle and sort of things you did every day, and just you can include some thoughts about your folks and
Well, I
home
think
life?
my father was pretty happy-go-lucky. My mother was kind of strict, but I probably didn't know she was strict until after I left home years later, so I just thought that's the way things were. But in retrospect, she wasn't any stricter than any mother trying to bring up children. And the things I like to do as a
Talk about what part of the country you were in and where that was, so we can get an idea about the setting.
We lived in New York, in Queens, which was one of the residential areas in New York. And first first house I remember was 2520 Broadway in what's the story? That's not, yeah, Story. Story, Long Island. And I was there till I was 6 or 7, and then moved to Corona, Long Island. And there were typical New York residential places where there weren't the kinds of playgrounds that kids are used to in the West. And so we played ball in the streets, and most of our games were games that you played in the street. What we call stick ball. Stick ball was a game where you would get your mother's broom and cut off the end of the broom, and that stick would be the bat. And you'd go to the store, and for a quarter you'd buy a ball. It bounced pretty high, it was very lively, hollow in the middle, and it was made by Spalding, and we called those Spaldings. And we played stick ball in a variety of ways, slow pitch, fast pitch, and probably about 20 games of stick ball. As far as I know, it's the only place in the country that's still played, or ever been played.
Okay, and during your childhood, do you have certain recollections about running with a group of friends, or sibling stories about your brother, things that you used to do, hobbies, and that sort of thing at home, out and away, school?
Well, actually, my brother and I were about 6 years apart. We really had very little in common, so we were not what you would call boyhood friends. And I was kind of a loner kind of guy. I only had 1 or 2 close friends. There was 3 that I can remember. A fellow lived around the corner named Ray Boccia, and a fellow across the street named Billy Brumley. And my best friend, who I went to grade school and high school with, was named Michael Trombetta. And Mike is the only one I really have stayed in touch with. So we were not in groups so much as individuals that played together, studied together.
Okay, and about school, your earlier memories of school, how was that those days?
I always enjoyed school. There were subjects I didn't like English. I loved mathematics. I didn't like English because I never saw how it could earn me a living in the future, so I assumed that it was secondary to something that was more important for my future. And that goes way back even in 1st and 2nd grade. My thoughts back then, I can remember saying, well, if I have to learn grammar, I'll just get somebody to do it for me.
Okay. And did you start having aspirations that early, or did that come later?
Well, I don't think there was ever an assumption on my part that I'd do anything but go on to college and finish my education. And I think that was an assumption that was made by my mother and father, and I never questioned it. It just happened. So it wasn't like one day I decided I'd go on and get a higher education. I just did it, and as far as I can remember, it was always there.
Okay, and as you were getting older, getting into your adolescence, growing up a little bit, and changing schools, and getting into maybe even your teen years, would you classify that part of your life any differently, or were there any significant changes at that point? Girlfriends, other guy friends that you had?
I never thought about girls much. I can only remember actually ever having one date till after I got in college. And the date was with the girl next door. And, more of infatuation, and knowing that sooner or later I'd have to date, so I went out with her. I was kind of shy guy. My pastimes were more intellectual pastimes, chess, mathematical games. I was quite studious, very heavy into school.
Were you involved in any sorts of sports, or had your other outside school activities changed at all at that point?
No, I was in various leadership roles in school, vice president of class, or presidents of the math club, and a bunch of things like that. I was in track. I ran the mile, and I also ran, at that time, cross country was a two and a half mile, and I ran that in high school. And I ran an interfraternity competitions in college as well.
Okay. Did your home life pretty much remain the same as far as a routine, as far as dinner with the family, set schedules, and that sort of thing, or did that remain fairly constant sort of thing all the way through your high school days?
Yeah, my home was fairly structured. We all sat down together for dinner. That is, all of us, usually except my father, who worked nights. My mother worked days. So he was rarely home at dinner time, maybe one day a week, when he would take the day off. Sundays we would go to his restaurant and have dinner together. But breakfast, dinner was all together. We'd listen to the radio, television. I remember we got our first television in 1948. So for the first 13 years of my life, there wasn't any television. And we would often listen to the radio together. There were some special programs we liked.
Okay, and where did you attend college?
Went to college at Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago.
And when did you know for the first time that you were going there, or set your sights on that?
Well, I actually got several scholarships when I graduated from high school. One was an NROTC scholarship, where the Navy would pay the full tuition for any one of 52 schools. And the schools ranged from the very prestigious ones like Harvard to fairly unknown schools. Illinois Tech, I believe, was second on my list and of preferences, and I got that with no problem. I'm not sure why I picked that one. I think it was the catalog was prettier than any other. I got very little counseling in high school.
Okay, and as your days in college went on, certainly was this the first time you were really away from home?
Yes.
And how did you find that time in your life?
Fine. I was 17.
Yeah. What did you think about being away from home, and were you having trouble, or were you really enjoying the independence? Tell us about that.
Really, I was kind of independent when I was home, so it was not like anything new to me. I think my parents raised me to be independent, fend for myself. So being away from college was not any particular strain. I had to learn how to study better. The freedom allowed me to back off on some of my subjects at first, and so I needed to relearn how to do that.
Okay. During college, had your social life changed at all?
Well, as I said, I didn't date at all in high school, and I started dating probably my freshman year in college.
Okay. Concerning Suzanne, how did the two of you meet?
I was a sophomore, and she was a freshman, and it was the beginning of the school year. There was a dance at my college, where a number of nurses, trainees from various hospitals in the area were invited, and there were a considerable number of women and very few men at the dance, and Suzanne was one of them, and I was immediately attracted to her.
Okay. And can you enlighten us a little bit about the courtship from that point forward?
It was I was pursuing it heavily from the beginning, and Suzanne, who was 18, was still feeling her first freedom away from home, and she wasn't interested in narrowing her relationship down to one person, so that gave me some rocky times. I was not interested from the time I met her, many other girls, or any other girls I met.
Okay. How about the two of your parents? Was there certain feelings of reaction with the meeting, or just the knowledge as things started picking up?
Sure. My parents were very, very supportive from the time I told them about her through the time they met her, and there was never any problem. They were totally appreciative of Suzanne and all the things that I wanted. Her parents were another story. They tended to be somewhat, I would say, prejudiced against Italians, and didn't want Suzanne to tie herself too closely to me, and I always assumed, and it's been confirmed, that had to do with my heritage and everything else.
Okay. And how about the latter years as you're looking towards graduation from
Well, let me say
college?
something else about Suzanne's folks. After we did get married, that all went away, and there was never any issue later on. So it was during the courtship years that there was some, I wouldn't say friction, it was just an aloofness.
Mm-hmm.
What's your other question?
Towards graduation, I know your plans getting out into life here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a brief chronology of what was happening at that point?
Well, we got engaged about a year prior to graduation, not quite a year, to my graduation. Suzanne was, of course, 1 year behind me in school. So I had an obligation with the Navy because of the scholarship, and went off to Newport, Rhode Island to start fulfilling my obligation while she stayed on to finish her college work. So we carried along on a long-distance romance, and finally got married right after she graduated, a year later, and then she moved to Rhode Island with me.
Okay, and what sort of memories do you have during that time when you were newlyweds and when you were serving your time with the Navy in those years?
It was happy times, struggling times like new couples. I don't remember the money being tight, but it wasn't the freedom to do the kinds of things we wanted to do. We lived first in Rhode Island for a few months before I got orders to move to Philadelphia, and we would travel home to New York every weekend, which was a long haul, and that got a little tedious. But that was an expectation I think my folks had, and maybe one that we put on ourselves too. So that was a bit of a struggle, but they went happy years.
Okay. How about the appearance of some children in your life? How are things changing at that point?
The parents of some children?
Appearance of children.
Appearance of children. Well, it was a year later, in July, that we were now living in Hawaii, and Michele was born, and Nancy, Suzanne's sister, came to live with us for a few months and helped us out with Michele as in her early weeks and months. And it was real happy. We had a lot of good friends in the Navy. We hung around with my Navy friends. The neighbors were all Navy people, so our life revolved around the Navy and various officers and their wives, who also had little children, most of them.
Okay, as time was going on and your children were growing up, did you establish any particular interests or hobbies or sorts of things that you did around the house, or were you pretty much occupied with the family life? Describe those years for us.
Well, we eventually had 4 children, and the 4 children, work, the things that were demanding of me at work, and the things were demanding of Suzanne, with having 4 little kids around the house, pretty well kept us occupied. There wasn't a whole lot of time for miscellaneous other activities and hobbies. And during those years, as we grew a little older, we both became avid bridge enthusiasts, and we played bridge quite a bit. Did some miniature work, and had a variety of hobbies, from bridge to miniatures, chess, to any number of things, woodworking a little bit.
Okay. And just retracing geographically your locations and where you were when after you did leave the service, can you trace your moves and where you were located during those times?
Well, after leaving Hawaii, we went to Chicago to live. I got a job with Procter & Gamble, and lived in first an apartment in Chicago, and then later our first house in Prospect Heights, Prospect Heights, which was maybe 25 miles away from my work, and commuted back and forth to work every day. Stayed there for 7 years, and then got transferred to Kansas City, and were in Kansas City for 5 years. In a variety of positions with Procter & Gamble. Eventually got transferred again to Sacramento, and lived in Sacramento. Since then, retired from Procter & Gamble in 1990.
Would you say that your lifestyle changed significantly after moving west to California?
Only since we had more disposable income. I think we could go to more shows, do more things that we didn't have the funds to do earlier on.
Mm-hmm. And how do you remember things changing as your children were growing up and becoming more independent themselves, as far as your day-to-day routine, things you like to do, things you're able to do, that sort of thing?
Well, I think the kids really never hampered us from doing the things we wanted to do. I think probably funds did. And as we became somewhat more affluent, that wasn't a problem anymore. Children really were never a problem in terms of keeping us from doing what we wanted to do.
Okay. And looking now into the future, do you have any aspirations, any future plans, things that you still would like to do, things that would be nice to do, something on that line?
Well, I think I'd like to see some more parts of the world that I haven't seen. I would like to go to South America and take some extensive tours through various parts of the continent. I'd like to go to Africa, to safari. I think the things that are yet to be done are in the area of just seeing parts of the world. I'd like to take a cruise down through the fjords into St. Petersburg and back, another Mediterranean cruise, those kinds of things.
Okay. And looking back, is there anything that you change or something that you might do differently if you had the opportunity?
Not really. I guess when I was younger I had aspirations to be a doctor, and if you'd asked me that question maybe 30 years ago, I would have said it was not to go on and pursue being a doctor. I didn't do that because of the scholarship that I had. didn't allow me to go to pre-med school or med school, so I went into engineering. And, you know, those are the kinds of things that 30 years ago I would have said, but right now I don't look back with any regrets.
Okay. There's a question down here that says, what are you most proud of? Or what are you proud of?
That's got to be hands down my children.
Okay. And do you have any fears as far as past, present, or future?
Well, the only fears I would have, and I say they're fears because they're mine, they're really not logical fears, would be that my two sons who aren't married don't find the things in life that fulfill them like I do. And I say they're illogical because I know they'll happen.
Okay. There's going to be one last message that we want you to give, but before that, we want to know if there's a song that you would like to sing.
Well, I'd rather discuss a poem.
Okay.
And this is not to tell you a poem, but it could be a reflection on a poem. Is that okay?
Okay, great.
Sure. And it's, I think, to me, the Trees is one of, the poem Trees by Joyce Kilmer, one of the most insincere works of poetry and verse that's ever been written.
Yeah. Let's wait for these guys who are making our house look nice, because we want to make sure we get this on film.
Maybe I'll speak louder because they may be here all day.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm saying the Trees is the most insincere piece of verse ever written. And the reason Trees is so maddening is because Kilmer must have had the Kilmer tongue very close to the Kilmer cheek when he wrote Poems Are Made by Fools Like Me. So obviously he was not being sincere. And that's the way I feel about a lot of poetry.
Okay. Very nice.
I could sing a song for you, but I think I'll pass on that.
Okay. I don't think this equipment is made for that, so. And the last thing we have to close out is a thought or maybe a message you have to future generations. You know, people will be watching this for many thousands of years, and maybe if there's something that you could pass along to them, this is a great opportunity to do that.
I would say for all the future generations would be my philosophy, which is to pursue those things in life that you feel are important to you. Don't give up too soon, and stick it out for the long run. Do it honestly and sincerely without hurting too many people or any people along the way. Don't pursue those things for your own gratification at the expense of other people.
Okay, Terry, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next set of these archival interviews.
Okay.
Okay, today's date is December 28th, 1996, and this is Chris Francino recording for his sister Yvette Podlagar. Can you please tell us your full name and when you were born and where?
Well, my full name started out being Mary Yvette Francino. I was born February 26, 1960 in Evanston, Illinois. My name now, since I've been married, is Yvette Francino Podlagar.
Okay, and you come from a family of how large, and your parents and how many brothers and sisters?
A family of 6, with my mother, father, older sister, and 2 younger brothers.
Okay, thank you. Right in away, I would like to get into some recollections of the earliest parts of your life that you actually can remember and that you do have memory of. Is there any particular time of your life where you can definitively remember an existence? Like, do you remember a certain room when you were a certain age, that sort of thing?
Yes, I started my life in Illinois and lived
there until I was 5, and I do remember vaguely the house that we lived in at that time. It was a small house with a very big yard. I remember apple trees. It could be that things I don't remember aren't quite correct since I was so young, but some of my earliest memories were when our brother Neal was being born. I can remember our dad taking care of us and trying to keep us happy, even though we were probably giving him a hard time. I remember I was thinking about not wanting to get dressed, and that he was showing us magic tricks, and that when Mom called to tell us about our baby brother Neal, I was more interested in when she was coming home than anything about Neal. And we sort of liked the name Andrew better than Neal. I remember Michele and I voting for Andrew, which is Neal's middle name, to be his first name. And I can kind of remember another very early memory was when I was home before I went to school, and when our sister Michele was in kindergarten, and she had a little chickie, which she named Pecky. And I remember our dog eating up Pecky. It was a very traumatic memory. I witnessed that, and I remember Mom was on the telephone, and I was trying to tell her, crying and stuff, trying to tell her about it, but she thought I was just doing my normal, little kid stuff, and then when she saw what was happening, she came right away. But and I sort of remember wishing I could go to school because Michele was going to school, and that's about the earliest memories I have.
Okay, and as a small child, do you have one general memory of an area where you grew up, or a particular house, or just when you think of yourself, but really as a child growing up, do you think of a particular area, place, location?
Well, I think of the 3 locations, the very early childhood of Illinois, but since those memories are very vague, then there was a period of time where we lived in Kansas, and I remember that a lot more clearly, so I think of those memories as a small child. And then when I was 12, we moved to California, and that's where Mom and Dad are still living in the same house that we grew up with there, so of course those memories are much more clear of those. We still go home to that same house.
Well, let's stick with the times in Kansas. In that phase of your life, about how old were you then?
We moved there when I was 5 in kindergarten, and lived there until I was 12.
Okay, a little later on we'll talk about some specifics like school and holidays and things like that, but during those times at that household, do you remember having particular activities, or was it just general playing, or did you have any specific interests that you were involved with at that time?
Well, I was playing the piano, I think the whole time we were living there, and we had the piano down. We had a split-level house, and on the lower floor was a big playroom that I remember clearly, and that was where the piano was, so I always did my practicing down there. And I really enjoyed the piano, and I do remember that Michele was taking lessons too, and Mom would have to remind us a lot of times to do practicing, and one time she said we would have to quit because we weren't doing our practicing, so I remember I got I think it was $2 for our lesson, and I remember I got $2 from my piggy bank once and said I would pay for it, and Mom was very touched by that and said we wouldn't have to quit. So piano was probably the only real activity I can remember, but we had a nice yard with a lot of hills, and there was I don't remember what we used to call it, the fields or something like that, that we would go out and play. Back behind our yard even, there were all these trees that were knocked down that we would climb through, and leaves that we would rake up in the fall and jump into big piles of leaves. So there was I remember Mr. and Mrs. Lindberger lived next door to us, and Mr. Lindberger was kind of we didn't like him very much. He seemed like he was always yelling about our dogs or something, but Mrs. Lindberger was nice, and we always used to bring her mayflowers. And one time she gave us candy. She said the Mayfairies came, and if we found the Mayfairies, could we give them this bag of candy? So we liked her
So you really only liked her for the candy, is that right?
Well, I was part of it. Very old, much of an older couple.
Okay.
Children.
Do you remember any particular traditions or routines that were a part of your early life? Someplace that the family or you and your sister or somebody always went on certain days, or certain things that you considered to be a routine part of your life that you remember? Or was it just day-to-day sort of happenings as a youngster?
Well, we always went to church every Sunday, and that was, I don't know if you call it tradition or just religion, but we always went to church every Sunday, and it seemed like we went out to donuts or something, at least sometimes after church we would go have donuts.
Okay.
And other than that, I don't really, I remember there being a campfire girl. This wasn't any kind of tradition thing. I just remember across the street, we lived sort of separated from the main kind of part of town on a very hilly road, and across the street was a campfire girl camp. I don't know why I brought that up. It doesn't really have anything to do with tradition, but...
Okay, let's skip, still talking about the same time in your life, about what you remember as far as, you know, your relationship with your parents there. Do you have a memory of them being strict or rather conservative or changing at that time, or how did you feel your life was as far as your relationship with your parents at that time and the things you were doing?
Well, are Mom and Dad going to be watching this? No, I think I would say the relationship with my parents and our family had a very close relationship. I don't think that they were overly strict or overly lenient. I would, if I had one or the other to choose from, I would say they were probably more on the lenient side, but not overly so. I mean, probably Dad was stricter than Mom, and was pretty much the disciplinarian.
And did you consider it pretty much, at least in your view then and or now, a traditional sort of family life with Dad coming home from work and having dinner at the normal time and playtime and school and that sort of thing?
Yes, I think it was very traditional, especially for that period of time, the 60s and 70s. Mom stayed at home most of the time, took care of the kids, and she did have some jobs here and there, real estate, and later on she got back into nursing and things, but she always was around when we were around. She seemed to pretty much work her schedule around ours, and Dad always was working at Procter & Gamble and was home for dinner, and so I would say it was very much the typical household, and I would say it's really pretty Leave It to Beaver-like. I mean, I don't remember there being...
Maybe the people watching this won't know what Leave It to Beaver is.
Well, that's sort of your ideal family, non-dysfunctional, just going along happily, kids doing their normal things. And
okay, I want to ask you about your remembrance of your grandparents at that time, and what function or role did they take at that time in your life?
Well, Dad's parents, Grandma and Grandpa Francino, had come over from Italy, so they were more European. They seemed more strict. They didn't have any qualms about telling us to clean up or sort of disciplining us, whereas Mom's parents, more or less, if they disapproved of something, they probably would tell Mom and let her handle any discipline. They didn't really tell us what to do. Grandma, neighbors, Mom's mother, played a lot of games with us, like Scrabble and Pinochle a lot. We probably saw Mom's parents more than Dad's parents. We probably saw Mom's parents about once a year at least, and Dad's parents maybe, I don't know, it seems to me only once every few years. And I think I was a little more scared of Grandma and Grandpa Francino. Grandpa Francino was very jovial and social. but he didn't really play with us a whole lot. I mean, he more, was hung around with the adults, and the same thing with Grandma Francino. Whereas Grandma Neighbors did do a lot of game playing, like I said, with us. Grandpa Neighbors was a little quieter. I didn't really have a super, I liked all four of them very much, but probably the one I was closest to was Grandma Neighbors.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about school. Do you remember your first day of school?
I'm not sure. I remember the first week. I'm not sure if it was the very first day, and I remember being excited about going. And
how did you have to travel to school?
it's hard to remember.
Did you take a bus, or were you driven?
I took a bus. That first day, I'm sure Mom took me, but then I took a bus in Illinois, and I remember that because one time I got off at the wrong bus stop during that first week, and was very upset by that. I just had to walk home a little ways longer, but yeah, I think I took a bus at the very beginning, and then we moved from while I was in kindergarten, and I think we walked to the kindergarten in Bonner Springs, which is where we were living in Kansas right after we moved for 6 months or so, while we were waiting for our house to get built. So.
Okay. Do you have? Well, I'm sorry. Later on in school, did you start to get a feeling that you excelled in one subject or another, or was more interested in a certain subjects, that sort of thing?
Yeah, from the very start, I think math was always my favorite, and I was very good at math. And even I think in third grade was when I was just like way above most of the other kids, and they gave me an Excel math book, and I remember going even at the library and looking up books about numbers and things like that.
Okay. And did you have a worse subject, or a subject you really didn't like at that point?
I didn't like social studies or science very much. I don't know in those early grades if they really even called them social studies or science, but as soon as I got to a point where I disliked something, it was probably more like third or fourth grade, and it was social studies and science that I didn't like. Probably social studies the most.
Okay. What about other things that were involved with school as a young girl? Things like crafts and that sort of stuff. Did you enjoy doing those things, making things?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I remember now my very worst thing. Now, when you're in elementary school, we didn't even have a PE, but as soon as we did, I was always very poor in athletics, and so I hated PE because I was the worst and would be the last one to get picked for teams and things like that.
Well, let's use that segue and go up into the later years where you still hated and didn't like physical education. Yeah. I trust from what you did say that line of feeling remained the same through your middle and growing up years in school. Is that correct?
Yes, that was always my...
And does that extend beyond PE to sports and that sort of thing? Were you participating in any sports, either within school or extracurricular?
Well, by the time I got to high school, I was very ambitious and wanted to go to a prestigious college, and realizing that my athletic career or participation was very low, I did try to get into tennis, and I did take some tennis, and I believe I joined a tennis team there in high school, but I wasn't much of a participant. I was not good in tennis either. But I actually did get better in tennis, and that's the one sport today that I really enjoy a lot. And so, I did the sport in school that I at least was not worse, that I was pretty good at, was track. I usually, when we did our 7-minute runs, I was one of the few people still running and still ahead of at least almost all the girls. So track I did okay with, but I didn't necessarily enjoy it. It's just that I was the one thing that I was fairly good at when it comes to sports.
Okay, where were you when you were in your high school years? Where were you living? Okay, Sacramento, California. And what was the name of your high school?
Encina High School.
Okay, and what years did you attend high school?
Freshman through junior year. I graduated
Which years were those?
You mean 1970, whatever, 1976, 75, 76, 77.
Okay. Probably be 74, wouldn't it?
Yeah, 74 is when I started, the end of 74.
Okay, and in high school, as far as academic, did you remain pretty steady as far as your interest in math and the sciences, and a little bit less so in the fuzzy studies or the non-sciences? Or did you,
No,
were there any
actually,
transformations that occurred there?
Yeah, I never really liked science that much, even though I loved math, and a lot of times people say they go together. I really loved math throughout my whole academic career. And I really enjoyed languages a lot. I took many years of Spanish and French. I was one of the few people, if not only people in high school, that was taking both French and Spanish. And I became a foreign exchange student my senior year because I enjoyed languages so much. And I liked English. I got an award for, an English, whatever, the best English student or something like that, in spelling. So I did like languages and writing and math. The science at our high school was really poorly taught. I just remember it being kind of like a joke. Biology and chemistry were not well taught at all, so I didn't really learn much about science until I got to college. And there I did enjoy the sciences more, the physical sciences. But in school it was really more languages and math that were my favorite subjects.
Okay, let's talk a little bit socially in high school and how you felt. Did you feel like that was a social platform for you? Did you have a lot of friends? Did you have a small group of friends? Talk about proms and just the social aspect of school.
Well, I was really pretty introverted, and Michele, our older sister, was very popular in school. And when I was a freshman and sophomore, she was a junior and senior, and she won Homecoming Princess both those years. And so I always felt a little bit in her shadow. I think I had a pretty big inferiority complex because at that time in your life you're very aware of boys and how they like you and being popular and everything. And I always felt that everyone, thought Michele was very popular, and she was very popular and pretty. And so I always felt a little bit, probably more than a little bit, I was very insecure those 2 years of high school, and I didn't have any boyfriends, and my crowd I hung around with was really kind of it was very much the brains of the school, but they were not sociable kind of people. I mean, one of them, Linda Collymore, was almost kind of very weird. I mean, I didn't really even like her, but she kind of was a misfit, which is sort of how I felt, I guess, during those 2 years, and so I hung around with her because I was, I tried to be her friend. My best friend was Yvette, who was weirder and was fine, but we mostly just were very suspicious people. And my junior year, is the year I really started a bit more. I didn't feel Michele was in college, but I didn't feel I had to kind of shadow. I wasn't so insecure, and I worked at A&W and became a bit more outgoing, and I think I got made me look a lot better, and I started wearing a little, so I gained confidence, and I had a boyfriend during that time, and I felt a lot.
Okay. The same subject of school, and I'd kind of like to the school phase. Where you here primarily back with a continuation of a little talk with Yvette Francino Padlagar, and we last left off. We were just in the process of asking about Yvette, your college days, and asked a lot of questions. Basically, just kind of outline where you attended, what years, and what you studied to start out with.
I went to UC Davis, which is about 20 minutes from Sacramento, from the years 1978 until, or was it 77? No, 78 through 82. I think that's right. And I was in engineering from the beginning. I entered as an engineering student and graduated with a degree in electrical engineering and computer science. So, to get that degree, mostly it was a lot of the undergraduate courses were a lot of math and science, and then with the the junior and senior year, taking a lot more electives along those lines, though, a lot of computer and engineering electives.
When did you feel you really had a direction about what you wanted to do professionally in your life?
Well,
was it before college, or was it after you were in?
It was before college. I definitely knew I wanted to use math.
When did you select your major?
Before, probably my junior year of high school, or it was my last year of high school. I used the fourth year of high school as an exchange student in Japan, like I said. But I went through all the counseling that junior year, and took some of the aptitude tests and things like that. And of the different careers where there was a strong emphasis on math, engineering seemed like the best kind of career for me. So and there was a lot of push to get more women into the engineering profession, and so I was excited about giving that a try. So as I said, I just entered the college with that in mind. I was a little hesitant about it because even though I enjoyed math a lot, I wasn't that crazy about things like physics. Once I got into physics, I had a difficult time with that, and even a lot of the engineering courses I didn't particularly like. I would have, if I could do it all over again, I probably would go for a computer science major, but Davis didn't offer that when I started, and they did have a software engineering program, or I probably would have been a software engineer, and they only started having that close to when I had almost graduated. During the end of my junior year, I think, is when they were starting up that program, and my counselors advised for me to continue with electrical engineering, and so that's what I did, but I just took a lot of computer electives.
Did you work at all while you were in college?
Yeah, my first semester, when I first got there, I worked for about a week in the cafeteria, and I got mononucleosis, and I was very relieved to have a good excuse to quit, because they put me in the pot room, which was, you go in there and you're like Cinderella, just a whole room full of big pots to wash. So I hardly count that. I also tutored math for a couple semesters, just maybe 10 hours a week at most. So I didn't work a lot during the time I was actually in classes. During the summers I would work. I worked one summer at A&W. I went back to Sacramento and worked at the A&W restaurant, and once I worked at a Subway shop. And then my junior year, I guess it was after my sophomore year, that I had an internship at Procter & Gamble in Modesto, and after my junior year I had an internship at IBM in Rochester, Minnesota. So those were very good experiences, very helpful when it came to graduating and getting a full-time job.
Okay, I want to get off the school subject just a little bit and actually back up in time and talk a little bit about your free time, and so entertainment sort of things, tastes and that sort of thing. So we can back up into the time frame of, say, any time that you have a very distinct recollection, say from 10 years old or older. Did you have any favorite TV shows when you were younger?
Yeah, I watched a lot of TV. In retrospect, I probably watched too much TV, but I enjoyed it, and I watched a lot of things. I remember as a young child, Leave It to Beaver was one of my favorite shows.
It's sort of a recurring theme in this interview.
the Brady Bunch, the Waltons, those nice family shows. Basically, I guess you could say I liked shows with that showed family life.
In your teen years, did you watch much TV, or is there a show or shows that stick out that were your favorites when you were growing up through high school and getting into be a young adult?
I don't really remember a lot. I'm sure I did watch a lot of TV.
Nothing you can
during
remember.
that time. Night Gallery was one I liked, and I don't remember if I was a teen or not, but Night Gallery was kind of a science fiction-y Twilight Zone kind of show that I enjoyed.
How about movies when you were younger and through those years too? Do any stick out in your mind? Did you have any recurring favorites, ones that you watched many times over and over?
Well, Wizard of Oz. I'm trying to think of others that were like that were sort of traditional. Sound of Music. I liked musicals. I still enjoy musicals a lot, like My Fair Lady and Camelot was one of my favorites.
Okay. Would you classify your source of media type of entertainment at stronger in the TV category, movies, books? Did you do much reading back then?
I read a lot. I probably of the three, I watched TV more than any watching movies or reading books, but I did read a lot of books. I liked the Nancy Drew books, Nancy Drew mysteries, and a lot of mystery books in general, and suspense kind of books. So those are still, as an adult, I still read a lot of that type.
Okay. Let's skip ahead to present day, or just in the more recent time frame. Now in the mid '90s, do you have favorite TV shows that you watch regularly or that you like a lot?
Well, this particular year, every year can be different, but ER is the one that I watch.
What type of show is that?
It stands for Emergency Room, and it's a drama, medical drama type.
Okay.
One of the reasons I enjoy that is because that's about the only program that my husband Carl watches, so that's something we watch together. And then I also kind of like soap opera-ish type dramas, like A Party of Five is the other one that I watch. And there's the soap opera All My Children is something I've watched off and on for like 20 years probably.
Okay, let's move to movies. How about any movies in the last say 5 years that maybe have made an impression on you, or that perhaps define one of the types of stories that you enjoy watching? Can you think of any?
Well, romantic comedies I like a lot. I don't like When Harry Met Sally is one that I enjoyed a lot, and Terms of Endearment. I don't know if that would be classified as romantic comedy, but it's kind of a sad and drama-like shows that have some comedy in them are ones I enjoy, and some suspenseful ones too.
Okay, let's talk about musical tastes. Do you have a favorite group or groups or a certain type of music that you like to listen to more than others?
Probably just rock and roll, and probably more like from the 70s and 80s, or I
Classic rock type of thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
classic rock's probably my favorite, but I have a pretty wide range of tastes. I kind of like mellow rock too, and then as having lived with Carl, who has he's more interested in music than I am, so some of his music tastes start to grow on me once I listen to them a lot, and he's sort of into alternative rock, which I'm enjoying more and more lately. I don't really like jazz very much.
What do you think about country music?
I like it all right. That's the one type of music that Carl never listens to, that he doesn't really like, and so I don't like it enough to go put on a country station or buy tapes or CDs. But when I do hear country songs, there's some that I definitely like. I did some country swing lessons once, which I enjoyed. So,
Would you like to get up and show us the little Cotton Eye Joe? maybe that's not necessary. Let's go ahead and switch to another subject that most people are very fond of, and it's food. Can you tell us, and this spans your entire life, this question, some favorite foods that have been your all-time favorites, or ones that perhaps you can remember were your favorite as a kid, even if it's something as simple as peanut butter jelly. That's the idea we're working for here.
Well, there were a lot that Mom made as we were growing up that I liked. I liked the tuna casserole that she made, and she made this kind of mayonnaise that really tasted totally different from the mayonnaise that you buy in the store. It was a really sweet mayonnaise, but we would put that in stuff like egg salad sandwiches, and that was good. I think I probably like Italian if there's an ethnic variety that I like the best. I like pizza and spaghetti and different kinds of pastas and manicotti and things like that.
Have you had any tastes that over the years have changed, something you really like now that you didn't before, or something you can't stand now that you used to like? Or an acquired taste?
I think I used to hate bananas, and I like them fine. I don't love them, but they're fine now. That's the only thing I can think of that changed. I hate oatmeal. I hated it as a kid, and I still hate it.
Okay. What's your favorite fast food restaurant?
Probably McDonald's.
Okay. And how about if you were going out to a nice dinner with your husband and fancy, there's no limit as far as price. Doesn't have to be that, but if you had any choice for going out, somebody else is preparing the food, and it was being done out at a restaurant. Do you have a particular favorite restaurant right now, or just pretty much cuisine style?
I'd probably go to a fancy French restaurant. I like most French cooking. In fact, I probably like French better than Italian, or at least as much, but it's just usually more difficult and expensive to prepare, so don't have.
Do you have a main course that you have in mind, or more dessert or something like that?
Not really. I just, the different sauces that they used on chickens and things like that. The few times that we've been to French restaurants, I don't even remember what I ate, but I remember I liked it. So I couldn't point to
Okay. Do you have a recipe that you're particularly famous for, or something that people are always asking you to make over and over? Something that you
No.
consider to be special? Okay.
Not really.
And let's say that you were cooking a pizza. What are some of the favorite toppings that you put on if you're just making it for yourself?
Cheese, lots of different cheeses, pretty much, and then I would probably put some tomatoes and olives and mushrooms. I don't really eat a lot of meat. I have never,
Okay.
well, other than when I'm a kid, but since I've been cooking on my own, I don't really prepare a lot of meat.
And you talked a little bit before about a food that you hate or something that you hate. Is there anything else that you just simply can't stand or don't even like being around the smell of?
Well, oatmeal's the biggest one, but coconut I've never liked, green peppers. I'm sure there are others. But
Okay, last question on food. I'm sure you're anxious to move on to a different subject. But this is something everybody wants to know. If you had just one meal left to go in your life, what do you figure you would ask for?
Kind of a tough one. I'd probably say manicotti is probably the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay, that's what you'll be getting. I'd like to switch gears here and concentrate a little bit more now specifically with your adult life and post-college graduation and your current family. You mentioned Carl. Can you please state his full name for us?
Carl Vincent Podlegar.
Okay, and how did you meet Carl?
I met him at IBM the first year. After I graduated, I went to work at IBM in Tucson, Arizona, and he was a co-op student there. He was attending Berkeley, the University of California at Berkeley, and during certain semesters he would be working down in Tucson as a co-op student. And we had a mutual friend that introduced us.
Okay, and what sort of courtship did you really engage in? Was it just friends at first? Did you go out on a date? Was it very strong, very quick? Can you expound on that?
Well, first we were just very acquaintances, and he had a big New Year's party in 1982, or I guess it was 83, the New Year of '83. That he invited me to, and I thought he was cute, and so I sort of liked him, and at that party we both had our share to drink, and were kind of flirting, and kissed at New Year's, and so that was the beginning of the relationship.
So that was your first kiss together?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I guess we'll speed ahead a little bit here, but when did you decide that the two of you wanted to get married?
Well, right, so I guess the question was, when did we decide to get married? And it was after a very rocky off and on courtship, but we actually decided, I think it was in 1984. It was in, like the end of the very beginning of 1984.
Okay, and what was the official date? What's the date, your anniversary? What date is your wedding?
May 12th, 1984.
Okay. And where were you married?
In Sacramento, California.
Was it a large wedding?
St. Ignatius. I would say medium. I think there were, I don't know, 150. I don't even really know how many people were there.
Okay. And how many children do you have right now?
3.
Okay, and what are their names and ages?
Megan, who is 12. Matthew, who we call Matt, and he is 9. And Scotty is 2.
Okay. And did these names come from any place in particular, or are they just, do you go through the same process that most people do as far as trial and error for names, or is there anyone that any of them are named after, or are they just simply names that you chose?
Their first names are all names that were not named after anyone. Kind of purposely we wanted to have them the unique names. But their middle names, on the other hand, were specifically picked to be named after someone. So Megan's middle name, Maria, is Carl's mother's name. Matt's middle name, Carl, is after his father. And Scotty's middle name, Christopher, is after yours truly. Or not yours truly. You, brother Christopher.
Okay. And this is kind of a very open question, but as precisely as you can do without going on, I wanted to ask you how really family life has changed you, and as far as taking the step from being a single woman, getting married, and having a family.
Well, it's definitely a different phase of life. No longer is your first priority yourself, but you're thinking of your children and their welfare, and much more responsibility, but a lot more joys and things that come from having children. So it's different. You're no longer out going to parties and staying up late and doing the things single people do, but or at least people without children. But mostly looking after children is the main responsibility, at least in my life, since I've had children.
Okay, and some specific questions concerning parenthood relating to you. Do you remember if you liked parenting immediately, or did you feel that it was an adjustment that you sort of grew into?
I liked it immediately. I always was very, I always wanted to be a mother, and I was very excited, and it's just a part of my life that I've always wanted, and was very happy that I was able to fulfill that and not have to go through a long period worrying about whether I was going to marry or have children. And so, it is an adjustment. It was a lot more work than I guess I anticipated, but there's also I think, even more of a bond with the children and more love than I could really even imagine before I had them. So certainly something that I would, there's not any question that I would do it all over again, and that I would, probably want to have 10 children if I wasn't realistic enough to know how much work and money that means, but the children themselves give me lots of pleasure in being a parent.
Do you remember who the first person you called to tell that when you first had Megan, your first child?
Probably Mom and Dad. I don't remember for sure, but I would guess, I think it was Mom and Dad.
Okay. And did you or do you now have any pet names for your children that you use other than their formal names? When they were babies, when Megan was a baby, we called her Poofy. A lot of the names are things that Carl originated. He calls Scotty Boo Boo a lot now, and we call them, all three of them, we called them Weasels a lot of times. Dad used to call us Skeeker when we were kids, I think, and I sometimes call them Skeeker also. I usually don't call him Skeeker, but I just thought of that when you were talking about that. Okay. And how about, this is a question I got out of a little guidebook for the interviews, and it said to ask the parent if there was one particular influence that they feel helped them the most with effective or good parenting, or was it simply experience? And certainly it is a combination of a lot of things. Was there a particular or overly strong influence that helped guide you?
I would probably say Mom. I mean, she was the role model that we grew up with all the years of our childhood, and I would say she was a very good mother, and so she was probably the biggest influence in my own methods and mothering skills.
Okay. With any success on these tapes, hopefully future generations will be watching this, and I imagine within that, from your children, there will be a lot of children, grandchildren that might be watching this that might want to know what their mom or grandma was like when they were a small child, and who better to enlighten them than you, their mother. Can you just briefly go through your three children and sort of, if you could paraphrase it, give us an idea about what type of child they are, what type of a young man or young lady they are, personality-wise?
Okay. Megan is very quiet. That's probably the main way most people describe her, especially with strangers. A lot of people call her shy, but when she's with people that she knows well, she doesn't seem, really that shy, although she is more of a loner, very intelligent, very creative, lots of crafts and cooking and things like that is what she likes to do. She likes to create new things. She's very interested in games, very competitive about games. So that would be my main description of Megan. Matt, who is now 9, is also a very academic kind of child. He likes science a whole lot. He likes to put things together. He likes building and computer games. And he's very sensitive boy, very kind and thoughtful, and that's my main description of him. Scotty's only 2 years old now, so it's hard to say what his personality is going to be like as he grows older, but at this point he seems to be a very Happy, playful, smart child, very affectionate.
Okay, thanks. Now I'm going to ask you about your immediate family, your parents and your brothers and your sister. And this will be very quick because I'm going to go through each of them one by one, and I want you to give me an adjective, one or two adjectives max, that not necessarily best describes them, but just simply pops into your mind when you hear their name and you hear about them. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one definitive thing about them, just something that sparks a nerve in your head when you think about them, and just one or two adjectives, and that's it. So let's go with your father, Terry.
Smart and stubborn.
Okay. Suzanne, your mother.
Nurturing. Affectionate.
Okay. Your older sister, Michele.
Nurturing also.
Doesn't have to be two.
It's hard to kind of on the
Sort of
spot
on,
of
yeah, sort of
thinking.
on the spot, but that's
Artistic, in the sense of photography, I guess.
yeah, there you go. You're describing everything. It is.
Okay, I would say artistic.
Okay, and Chris.
Kind of a jerk.
Cut.
I would say witty and intelligent,
Okay, and Neal.
outdoorsy, sensitive.
Okay, thanks. Now, here's sort of a potpourri of some general questions before we get into the home stretch of this interview, and this is just some general questions. I understand that you stay quite busy with your parenting. However, when you do get some free time, is there anything in particular that you like to do when you don't have the responsibility or concern of watching after the little ones?
Well, I've worked even full-time for a lot of the years since I've been out of college, even when the children were small. So I work in the software industry, so a lot of the time when I'm not at home with the children, it's because I'm at work with doing programming. Is my main thing I do. And I enjoy that. I enjoy the computer. And then I still like to read. I like to do needlework. I enjoy, even when I'm not parenting, I like doing things for the family, like preparing photo albums or preparing for birthday parties and things like that, or just playing with the kids. Not necessarily taking care of them, but just doing things with them.
Okay. And this is a question that deals with some concerns that you may or may not have. Politically speaking, we live in sort of a very dynamic time politically, certainly. Are there any governmental issues or political ideas or views about what is most important to you, or that you see as the most important issues facing us today and in the future for your children?
Well, politics has never been something that I've been that interested in. I mean, I know of a lot of the issues, and something that probably the thing I feel most strongly about, I don't know, would necessarily be called a political thing, but it would probably, as far as controversial things go, probably abortion is the thing that I feel strongly. I've been in groups to try to help women that have gotten unplanned pregnancies to carry their babies to term, because I feel strongly about the right to life type position. But as far as things like the health care reform and budget and those kinds of things. I think those are all problems, and there's pros and cons, certainly to the different ways of addressing those, but I don't have any really strong views on this is the right way, things that we should do, or that I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm an independent type of voter, and I try to just listen to both sides of the issues and vote accordingly, but I'm usually not very strongly on one side or the other of the views having to do with those kinds of things.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the subject of habits and lifestyle. Do you consider yourself a person who's usually late or early, typically, or just on time, or that sort of thing? Do you have?
I'm usually, if anything, earlier on time. I get very nervous about being late, and I usually try to do things like way ahead of schedule. I don't usually procrastinate about things.
Okay, and several of these things that I'll ask you are basically two sides of the coin. You can tell me if you lean towards one side or the other, or fall in the middle someplace. Shy or outspoken?
Shy.
Someone who uses the phone or likes to write letters more?
Write letters.
Okay, and how about routines as far as special chore? Do you have special chore days or special days where you do laundry washing or house cleaning, that sort of thing, or is it just as needed?
At least for the last few years, it's been Sundays is when we do the chores, so the laundry and the big clean up the house chores.
Okay, are you a person that's more likely to put a dollar bill in a bank or go to the lottery office and buy a ticket?
The bank.
Okay. Do you have any regular, or do you have a regular exercise program or any routine that you do as far as just keeping yourself physically fit or physically active?
I usually go in binges where I'm doing something like a stair climber or jogging or something like that regularly, but that usually lasts a few months, and then for some reason I sort of slack off for a while. But it seems like I'm very active and running around, just taking care of things around the house, so I don't worry about it that much.
Okay. And just a typical day around the house, what would you say you'd find yourself wearing wardrobe-wise? Are you in evening gowns or are you in jeans?
Jeans, definitely. Very casual.
Okay. And how about cooking around the house? Is that a shared responsibility, or is that fend for yourself or order out?
It's we usually have dinner every night with the whole family, and on the weekdays, Monday through Friday, I do the cooking, and on the weekends, Carl does it.
Okay. And do you have any habits you'd like to break?
Probably, it's not a habit I'd like to start, is probably doing the exercise more often.
Okay. Wrapping up here, have you thought about what you might want your epitaph to read?
No.
Think about it.
Hopefully I'll have a lot of years to figure that one out.
Okay, that's not a very good thing to put on a tombstone, but if that's what you want.
I miss you.
How about predictions for the future? Any of those? Your son's going to be a rock star, or your husband's going to invent a cure for cancer, or...
Well, I think in the near future there's a good possibility we'll be moving from this area to maybe Boulder. Is just kind of a thing we've been talking about. Long term, I'm guessing Chris and Neal will get married, eventually, and have children. I think that all my kids will be successful. I think they have the makings of successful people. not much more.
Okay. And then we just have a couple of knowledge questions we want to see. What is a Shiite Muslim? Just kidding. We're going to finish up now. Is there anything that we didn't cover, or something that you'd like to leave us with, or leave a thought with us before we shut this down?
Well, the one area, or 1 year that was really important that we didn't talk about a lot, and I could probably just do my own videotape on it. It would be the year in Japan was between the high school and college years. That was a kind of a turning point for me in some ways, because it was my first year away from home, and I think I grew up a lot in those years, so it probably was the transition from girl to woman in that period of time. And, you know, other than that, I don't really have parting thoughts. I hope that we can continue and maybe do some follow-on type interviews so that our descendants will have some knowledge of our lives, and appreciate the chance to give you my thoughts and my perspectives on my life.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll see you at a later date on another tape.
Okay.